Welcome to Workplace Whispers with Dr. Olufemi Ogunlobo, where we tackle the most pressing issues in work, in business, and in human capital. That's what we do here on the show. Well, Dr. Ogunlowo is a seasoned HR expert and CEO of Strategic Outsourcing Limited with decades of experience navigating workforce management. Now, on this episode of Workplace Whispers, we have a very interesting question that we're going to talk about today on the show, and it's something that you really should know about. And also, every organization should also take note of this one as well. Now, what exactly is the D-Vuca-D world? I like to call it D-Vuca-D world. But we're going to break out that principle down for you in this conversation as it unfolds. But the question here is, are Nigerian organizations truly ready for a world shaped by digital disruption, chaos, and constant change? Those are the talking points for today on the show. But to help us unpack all of this on the show, we are joined by Miss Busola Alofe, a seasoned business and HR leader with over 30 years of global experience. As the founder of Bristol Cone Experience, she helps organizations build cultures and capabilities that thrive in today's fast-changing digital world. My name is Praise Mba, and you're welcome to join us on Workplace Whispers.
Thank you, Praise.
Thank you so much.
And you're welcome.
Thank
it's a
you.
pleasure to see you again.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here. It's been a while, Femi.
Yeah,
but
nice,
thank you for having me.
Oh, great. You've done this for 30 years or more, right? Helping organizations navigate culture and helping them to be a better version of themselves. But then the world keeps changing. So what exactly is the current state of the world? What exactly is the current culture, that is driving organizations?
The world is constantly evolving. And if you look at how human beings become, there's a pregnancy. And then a child is born, the child grows, becomes an adult, and then we become elders, and ultimately everybody goes somewhere else. So that is the same thing. Absolutely.
Decline happens.
Oh, well.
Okay.
So it is what you've mentioned there, D-Vuca-D. The world today is highly disrupted, very, very volatile. It's uncertain. Things are very complex. And then it's very, very diverse as well.
Okay, can you help us break that down? D-Vuca-D.
D-Vuca-D.
Yeah. So let's take it one. Yeah, exactly.
Life is disrupted. Okay. I was talking earlier about Nigeria. Let's bring it home. We live here and we are experiencing day to day in Nigeria. You wake up today, petrol price is 900 naira per liter. It was 500 like a year before that. Then it went to 500. Then it got to 850, and then we were seeing 970. Then it went to 1,002. That's disruption, because imagine you budgeted at 850, and before the same year ran out, your budget, the OPEX you needed to spend had gone up by like 30-40%. The question is, where is all of that money coming from? Even if it's at home or a micro, small, or medium scale enterprise, we start with plans about how much money we have and what we hope to be able to achieve with the money we hope to make in revenues. But then all of these factors are changing constantly. That's disruption.
Okay.
For individuals, where is my pocket money coming from to make up that difference in the cost of my transportation? For companies, all your employees have to come to work, and so on and so forth. And then you talk about the large companies, you talk about Nigeria as a whole, disruption from oil price volatility. That's how we make our money. So those are some of the factors. And then we must talk about technological disruption. Digital transformation has changed the world, and it will never be what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. All of that is bringing a need for everyone to be agile, in the sense of whatever the changes that is coming, we've got to be prepared for it in whatever way that preparation needs to come.
Change?
Oh, absolutely. We can anticipate change. The way for me personally to kind of deal with the fact that change is constant is be open.
Okay.
Because I know change will come. That doesn't scare me. What I have to do is to make sure that I keep improving, I keep developing, I keep learning, such that when a change comes, I can understand it, and then I can think through what the implications are going to be. And by the way, that's why we need networks.
Okay.
You can't do it alone. You can't live alone as an individual and or a company.
So as
a business owner, yes, you have to have your network, collaborative partners, thought partners that you can talk through things you're experiencing. And one of the things I really like
in this age of cutthroat competition, then how do you do collaboration?
Well, look at Amazon. Amazon has competitors that are also its business partners. It's called co-opetition. And so there's no need to be worried particularly about the fact that there's a competitor. Rather, you have to know what it is you must protect. So your core capabilities and competencies, that you know that is what makes you who you are, and that differentiates you, yes, and shouldn't get into the wrong hands. That you protect. However, you need to be open to borrowing ideas from different industries, different organizations, and even finding opportunities to collaborate with the so-called competitor. Because if the pie is like medium-sized, what if together you can make it a gigantic pie and then everybody wins? So that, those are different ways.
Bank the D.
The D, yes.
Right.
So disruption comes from all of that. And then the volatility. Volatility means things are not stable, okay? Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low, sometimes it's even below low. That's volatility. When things are volatile, things are uncertain, okay? So that's the other one. And for volatility, what I like to think about and what I advise people to do is you've got to be grounded in something meaningful. So no matter what is changing and, is kind of shifting so quickly around you, you're grounded in the fundamentals. So if it's a company, your core values.
What about if you are grounded on sinking sand?
Why would you be? You had better not be grounded on sinking sand. I mean, that is dead on arrival already. I mean, sinking sand, what can you do? You've got to run out of that place.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that what is creating
your businesses that are actually on sinking sand without knowing it. Their businesses have gone, the future has come, and what they were doing that was generating revenues in the past is not the way of the future, but they remain adamant that this is where they would be.
Well, let me tell a small story. I read this once and I was like, oh, wow, okay. This was years ago. There's a certain company in a certain country where they used to make feeding bottle tips, the rubber tip on feeding bottles for babies. So that was their business and they were doing really, really well. And then one day they woke up to a reality that the population was declining. People were not having babies anymore. So guess what? The business was dying. You know what they did?
No.
They looked at that country and said, okay, if people are no longer having babies, that is where we are at. Well, let's make sure they're not able to have babies. And they changed from making feeding bottle tits to, guess what? Condoms.
Same technology.
Same technology. And guess what? Their business went on a totally different growth trajectory. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that you've got to be open. You must always be watchful of what is happening around you, sensing, collaborating with people, being part of sessions such as this where you learn and you hear about what is going on, because you cannot be an island and expect longevity. And so it's really, really fundamental that you understand your business principles, what you're in business about and to do and to deliver, but also very open to things that are shifting in your context. And that way you'll be able to make the right strategic choices that will keep you and your organization relevant into the future. And the C, what's the C?
The C in the card D.
Oh, the D-Vuca-D, complexity.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, complexity is all around us. Where are you from? What state?
I'm from Osun State.
Osun.
Go Osun State.
Go Osun. Guess where I'm from? Ekiti. Ekiti Kete.
Okay.
And where are you from?
I'm from Abia State.
Abia. See, that's kind of different diversity but complexity, because the way somebody from the southeast sees things, the experiences you have in Osun, very different from maybe the ones I've had in Ekiti. That's Nigeria. And then we have our northerners. So Nigeria as a body is a complex ecosystem. And imagine the leaders of our country. You want to take one decision that seems very clear directionally, And then you have to consider all the other interests, and suddenly it cannot be that particular decision. You've got to shift it, shape it.
And that happens in business also.
And it happens in business. So complexity comes from the volatility, it comes from the uncertainty, it comes from the disruption. When things are complex, it brings dilemmas, and you've got to make choices.
Is the result
yes.
of those other factors.
Those other factors. And maybe of the reality of your situation as an organization. So
now,
that's
why should a business leader or small and medium scale enterprise CEO listening to us today not say those are just buzzwords?
Well, if your business is struggling in Nigeria today, you had better know that this is not a buzzword, that these things are affecting your business.
So what steps should they take?
So the steps, it's what we've been talking about. Like, you know that this is the business you're doing, and you know that Nigeria, there's a lot of instability in the nation right now. Look at, we're an import dependent country. We are dependent on oil prices. We sell crude oil, and we make refined petroleum products. Okay, Dangote refinery is here and exporting, but you've got to understand that FX will affect the nature of your business. And if your business is dependent on imports, you've got a challenge because of the FX rates that are going up. And so, look, what do? You've got to start thinking about options. Can you source your input locally to reduce your OPEX? Can you find alternative suppliers and things like that to reduce your how vulnerable your business is to the shocks from the complexity and the volatility?
Those same questions were relevant in 1960, and they are still relevant today. So the question we then ask is, so why shouldn't I take this just to be buzzwords? Because the same questions I asked in 1960 as to whether or not we should source locally or import is the same question I'm asking today, even though the complexity is deemed to be there. So what's the difference?
The questions may not necessarily have to change. What is changing is the context in which you're asking those questions. If you don't understand what is shifting in the context, you're going to be asking the questions, but you're going to be putting the wrong answers into the mix. And that is going to prevent you from achieving your strategic objectives.
Business owner, it shouldn't just be about the question, but the context of the question.
Absolutely. And that's why, when you talk strategy to organizations, so small businesses may not think strategy is a big word, but strategy is just your business, what you want to achieve and how you do it. And you've always got to come back to those fundamental questions. What am I in business for? Can I achieve it in this context I'm in? And that context is changing.
And when the context changes,
yeah,
what should I do to
exactly
make sure that
I can still achieve my objectives? Or do I need to change my objectives? Because I can't change the context. And so those are complexities that you've got to grapple with. What do you have control over? What don't you have control over? And what do you do about those things you don't have control over?
So what's the D?
The D is diversity. Again, I'll use Nigeria, where we live. Diversity, different states, different languages, different backgrounds, different upbringing. In business, you have the small organizations, you have the medium-scale organizations, you have the mega-large, you have the multinationals. All of that is diverse. And in a particular company, you have multiple generations in the workforce. Your baby boomers, maybe they're getting into their 70s. You have your Gen Xers, you have millennials, you have Gen Zs. Well, Gen Alpha is coming into workplace. And imagine having all of those people in the same work environment. That is diversity. But it's a strength. That's
chaos on its own also.
Oh, that is chaotic. It can, let's say it can be
chaotic.
But if you understand that diversity can bring a lot of value to you and to your organization, because different generations are strong in different things. We cannot throw away the experience and expertise of our older generations. You cannot. Those are our mentors, coaches. They've lived it. Our younger generations could have great skills and be able to do a lot, especially because they are born into technology. I say that babies born like in the past 10 years or something, they're born with telephones in their hands.
Absolutely.
Okay, tech is in their DNA, and they're very networked and very technologically agile. We need that, but they haven't had the experience of applying that in real life situations and the rigor, and they haven't seen the consequences of choices they make, given who they are and how they are born to be. And they can rely on the experiences and the expertise of the older generations. And then vice versa. older generations who like did paper in the office or type. I typed once, on typewriters, but I quickly moved into computers and stuff, and now tech is tech and all that. So it's really important to understand the generations, and they complement one another. So you can leverage that diversity and add tremendous value in your organization.
That's quite something for an introduction. So what are the specific questions you now want us to answer?
Yes, thank you. I mean, that D-Vuca-D, I was just taking notes, and I'm going to go home with that. I like the way you broke it down step by step approach. The specific questions are there, but before we get into that, still on this D-Vuca-D reality, would you say that's really a reality in Nigerian workspaces, or are we always reacting in panic mode anytime a culture change hits?
What do you think?
Because I'm really,
Yeah.
I want to, because there's a diversity, the Gen Zs. Is that really a reality in the workspaces?
It is a reality in Nigeria.
I believe it is a reality.
It is.
And there is no one who can actually deny the fact that all the elements of the D-Vuca-D are present every day, right from the bus stop, right, to the boardroom.
Absolutely.
It's all there. And it's just about what do we do to ensure that we overcome the challenges that they present and the opportunities that they present are tapped.
Yeah. It is the reality of our lives in Nigeria. There's no way we can say things are not volatile. Oil price changes, petroleum at the pump price changes. That's volatile. It's changing like practically every day. Today, Dangote has lowered prices at the for petroleum at the pump. Tomorrow, it's gone back up. That's volatility.
Absolutely.
Complexity, I've talked about our backgrounds and all that, and the diversity we have and all that. So yes, it is our reality
Exactly.
and of our organizations.
Remembering the question you asked about people building, on sinking sand. That's what I was speaking to that question.
I mean, even individuals build on sinking sand. It's like if you're not the kind of person, you're not a people person. Relationships are not your thing. You're more a think person. Do computer science and tech tools. If you decide you want to work in a job that requires a lot of relationships, I mean, that's sinking sand for you right there. You're in the wrong place. That's sinking sand.
Competencies.
Of your competencies and even your innate abilities. So yeah, it's real.
Okay, then now let's go over to cultural transformation. We talked about that as well, adapting to change and all of that. But do cultural transformation efforts truly impact business performance, or are they just largely symbolic?
I would say it depends. It essentially depends on the why of the culture transformation, what it is you're trying to achieve, and the how you do it. Okay? So culture transformations could end up being just a symbolic gesture. And I say this because, look at what's happening with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. It was the rage for like a good 1 or 2 decades. And I experienced it. I led work in this area in global organizations, and we added value to the organization. And then there are other organizations, other companies where they did it just because it was the buzzword. It was the fad of the day. They didn't really believe in it. And so they did it. And the minute a president came and said, stop DEI, they stopped. And it was,
the question we should ask, especially regarding that is, at what point do cultural changes and shifts actually also violate other cultural concepts? Because if you look at DEI, for instance, in many instances there were people who cherry-picked certain elements of it and then promoted those elements far and beyond what other people could tolerate. And I'm not going into any specifics, And at the end of the day, those little elements that were highlighted are actually the things that brought about more or less the downfall or the notion that, in fact, indeed, DEI itself was an impediment. Exactly.
Yeah. But that's human nature.
Yeah.
That it happens anyway. And so I will go back to what I started with. What's the intent of a transformation, of a change? Why am I doing this? Do I see value in it? DEI for me, let's talk about the gender one. The day I saw research that said gender diverse teams, it's proven data research, They deliver higher productivity, higher profitability. There's no question. Whatever organization it is I am in, I'm chasing after gender diversity, kind of
The
equitable
extent
gender.
that,
Yeah.
people can then argue what's the definition of gender and what are the,
I'm
so
not
we are
gonna
not
go
going
into
to,
that
exactly.
later,
So we
because
leave all
people
of that.
can decide it's anything
Yeah.
you want, but let's talk about an organization. You know what it is you're in business to achieve, and you know that this lever can help me achieve it. I'm going after that lever. And if my current context doesn't support what that lever can deliver to me, then I'm definitely going to transform. Okay? So if your transformation is rooted in palpable intent, real value drivers for your organization, and you kind of execute your agenda well, particularly driving change management, which means you're proactively considering the implications of your change program on people, and you're thinking about that broadly, holistically, and then you're risk mitigating. If I do this, this is how people might perceive it, so I had better help make sure they understand why we're about to do this in this company. Once they understand it, then you do things to make them support or encourage them to support. You help them to understand it's not to take anything away from you, rather to enable you do more, be more, contribute more to the organization, and help our organization succeed. And they see what is in it for them. There is a much, much higher chance that your transformation will be successful, whatever it is.
Well, let's step back.
So,
you transform from a state.
yes.
Well, what's the state itself? So that would beg the question: what is culture? Because but just before you answer it, I'll tell a short story, and I'll tell you the relevance of that story. There was a little boy in a little village who witnessed an accident, and the victim of that accident was rushed to the nearest hospital. When they got to that hospital, the doctor said, make a deposit of 1 million naira before we can start treating this child. The family didn't have 1 million, and then the child died. And that little boy that witnessed it said to himself, I want to be a doctor. And he said that to himself because he said, I want to save lives, I want to reduce suffering. Yeah. There was another little boy in another village nearby who saw the biggest man in their society, the richest man in their community, being referred to as doctor. Then he found out that that person was a medical doctor and he was the richest person in their community. And he said, oh my God, I want to be a doctor. Now, both of them started their journeys of life, but their reasons for wanting to be doctors were different. And therefore, the cultural elements of pursuing that different. And so it begs the question, does mission drive the culture? And if so, what is mission and how does it drive culture?
Okay. Interesting question, quite kind of broad as well. So I would say they drive one another. It just depends on the context. Back to this context thing. Now, in the two stories you've shared, the fundamental theme for me that I pick out is purpose. Each one had a purpose. Who I am, who I want to become. And that drove the directions they pursued. Who I am, what I want to become is the central, your reason for being. And the what you pursued to get to that vision, that's your mission, the things you do to achieve your ultimate goal. I define culture in 4 ways. Number 1, the look, the feel, the smell of the place is culture. If I walk into a space and the walls are dirty, and so on, it gives me an initial perception. I may not know anyone in that organization or not know anything about them, but from the gate, I can sense that, okay, there's something off here.
Not necessarily off, that's just who they are. So it might be off.
It's off from my perspective. Exactly. From my perspective, okay. So that's one definition of culture. Secondly, culture is what leadership allows. If the leaders of a group or even a family, think parents, if you allow laxity or you tolerate bad behavior or you tolerate fraud and corruption, that will be what the organization is. Okay, that's culture. And what leadership allows becomes the way things are done.
So the CEO cannot argue that employees are not punctual when he doesn't even show up at work? Or is that what you're saying?
Depends again. Okay. Context, yes. A CEO, what's the job of a CEO? A CEO's job is not to sit behind a desk. Okay. But employees, their job may require them to sit behind a desk. I may be working, a CEO will be kind of doing a lot of business development and all that, traveling from place to place and all that. So it's a little bit different,
Now,
but that doesn't really mean.
Is because we talked about what leadership allows. So
yes.
there is a difference between what the leaders do and what they allow.
Exactly.
And I would like us to break that down.
What you do needs to align with what you should be doing and what is expected. Okay, so it needs to align with the core values of the organization. Okay, so it's about what is expected, what this organization says is right, what our policies define and demand of everyone. It's in that context that we say this is right way of behaving or is not the right way of behaving. Okay,
so the conduct of the CEO does not necessarily give rationalization.
No, it doesn't unless it is wrong.
Correct.
In the context of that organization, or if it violates laws and regulations. So it's that's also part of it.
So
back to those definitions. So it becomes the way things are done in an organization. I remember organizations are different. Their mission, their vision, their values different. So it depends on what it is they are trying to achieve. But compliance requirements, regulations, particular to those organizations and industries, they are sacrosanct, okay, depending on which one it is. And so it becomes the way things are done, and culture is also those core values. Many organizations have core values. We are teams, we are this, we are that. They say.
But the question is what truly drives the actions and decisions being made.
That is the fourth definition. It is those core values translated into the behaviors we see or that we don't see. So when you kind of look at all four definitions of culture, it spells this is an organization to you, whatever the dimension is. So to your question about does mission drive culture, does culture drive mission, what did Peter Drucker say? And some people said he didn't say it well. I think he said it. Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Absolutely.
You may have these goals, but if these four things I've talked about are not aligned with how you must execute your objectives to achieve your vision over time, it's dead on arrival.
I mean, after all, strategy would contain plans, right? And if your plans would be, for instance, launch something at a certain time, but your culture of sloppiness, procrastination, you're not just going to achieve it.
Exactly.
So obviously, attributing that to him again, culture always will eat everything for breakfast.
And let me say something about the point you're making about the CEO, not just the CEO, leaders, because in organizations, the base of the organization, they tend to look up. And we tend to kind of think leadership is those people at the top. Yes, they are, but leadership happens. It occurs at different levels, okay? My favorite layer, or the one I pay a lot of attention to, are the team leads and supervisors, because they are the ones that lead the biggest part of the organization day to day. So if that group does not get your culture or don't align with your vision or your values, it's going to be really difficult to have a great culture. Are okay to do. If they are really not okay in the context of the business, you're going to have the culture clashing with the business strategy and direction. So if there's no articulated or codified one, the CEO should involve broad-based engagement. Let's co-create this culture which drives buy-in, because it was us. We created it. It is ours. That's one thing. Now, where culture has been codified, it's there. It is what we want. We've got to explain it to people. And so again, engagement sessions. We've got to kind of drive it through our performance management processes, the way we do things and all of that. It's got to really come to life. And the CEO needs to ensure that that is happening across the organization. And the leaders at the different levels also need to take on that ownership and accountability for bringing culture to life.
Walking the talk comes in at that point.
I was going to say that all those leaders we've mentioned must be role models of that culture we have codified.
So the CEO cannot say, well, part of our core values is respect.
And you're not.
But you are not
respecting everybody. It's just,
because at the end of the day, it's just going to be buzzword.
It's more than what you say. It's how you live it. It's the actions which speak.
So that means we can bring back, earlier we talked about what leaders do
Yes.
and what leaders accept or tolerate.
Absolutely.
Now, there are instances where it's not really about what they tolerate, but what they also do. And especially when it comes to culture, we must define what are the things that, even though the business expects, for instance, punctuality, attendance, and all of that, but at certain levels within the organization, given the roles that people have. For instance, a business development manager might have to go from home to a client's, engagement. Is he punctual at that engagement becomes the relevant question. Not is he punctual in the office, because he's not expected to be in the office at that time. So if a middle level officer then sees that the business development manager is not at work and says, my guy hasn't come, therefore, then that's wrong. How do we get them to understand that?
So there's something about, and this is very, very strong for me, my own personal value system tied to excellence. Every employee needs to somehow be nurtured to build that for themselves. So it becomes, whether my boss is here or not, I want to be punctual. I want to deliver excellence because that is who I am. That's what I want to be known for. That's something that has always guided me, regardless of the company I worked in. I worked in companies that were not world class, but I focused on personal excellence. And guess what happened? It got me noticed. It opened the doors into the global organizations I wanted to go. And I never let go of that personal core value system, regardless of what the bosses were doing. So yeah. But the truth is, yes, the workforce will look at the bosses. So bosses, because it's just like musicians and politicians, people are watching you, so you've got to be careful. However, I'm bringing it back to the individual as well. Who are you? Do you want to be known as a sloppy person? Do you want to be known as a rude, disrespectful person?
Sometimes people argue, well, I'm not paid enough to do this. So
well, if it blocks the door that's going to take you into the place that's going to pay you enough, it's a catch-22 for you. So you better be on the right side of yourself and do the things that will help you achieve your personal goals. That's how I put it.
And why should organizations ensure that right from the gate, when you are hiring, you are actually hiring those who are fit, for your cultural expectations within your organization, and not just the competence to do the job?
You know something? I recently, a couple of weeks or months ago, I went to an office, a company's office. We're having an exploratory meeting, and it was the first time I was going into that office. From the gate people, the gate men that welcomed me, I was in my car. I'm like, this place is different. It was amazing. I've seen this in 2 companies in Nigeria. And I was like, how did they do this? Because right there, it was welcoming, it was warm. You could see the excellence in the people. I'm like, Nigeria is tough. Everybody was complaining. These security guards were all smiles. And these are some of the lowest paid people in the workforce. It was very, very unique and different. And clearly, I could tell that this leadership is paying a lot of attention to the culture, the things that matter to the people. So, back to the question you've asked, you've got to hire right. Hiring right means there's a job, there's certain knowledge, skills, and behaviors that are necessary for anyone to be successful doing those jobs. Competencies, hire for those competencies. So competency-based interviews, very important. Beyond that, there is culture fit. So you may have all the competencies, but if you are not demonstrating the behaviors, and we see you're going to come into this company and do we speak Yoruba on this? And you're going to dabugbo a rufus from a culture perspective, I'm not going to hire you.
Well, how do you know that at the point of interview?
So I did that recently. A client involved me in the interview. It was even out of scope work, but we want our clients to be successful, and they asked me to be part of an interview process with some candidates. And the first candidate that I spoke with, it was clear that if this person comes into this organization, there's going to be a lot of problems. A lot of the competencies were okay, but the one that made me say do not hire was a behavioral thing that he demonstrated during the interview that was very clearly something unprofessional. And maybe he didn't know but it was flowing, and it was something he repeated a lot of times. So I could tell it's in the gene. And I just said, this is going to be a problem in your organization because of your culture. And so you've got to pay attention to those cues and balance your decision, because it's not just about the ability to do the job. You know how we say we promote, a lot of people are promoted for delivering money, revenues and profitability, but they kill the teams. They're rude, disrespectful, they stress everybody out, and people leave and all that. They're destroying value. So it's a very similar thing.
For any more questions?
No, I think it's time to wrap up.
Oh, really? I'm enjoying this conversation. Actually, myself.
Especially, I was going to ask what exactly he said, because sometimes we do things that we're not even sure.
Yeah,
Especially when we go for
Well, maybe
interviews.
that's client confidentiality.
I know.
Yeah. You sure we don't have time for one more
No, we
question?
don't have time,
We don't
because
have.
time is
Okay,
out.
so that means we'll have to bring you back.
Oh, wow.
Because this is quite an interesting edition that people will learn a lot from, and there's still a lot that we can learn from you.
And I've been picking up one or two things as well. So I love these conversations because we're constantly learning. And, that's just very
So I
important.
would like to say a big thank you to you for finding out time to join us on Whispers today.
I appreciate
The Workplace Whispers continues,
Yeah.
and most definitely we'll look forward to having you here again.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm not sure we whispered at all today. But yeah, it's been a really, really interesting time. Thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
I'll be back if you invite me.
Sure.
For sure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, watch out for the next episode of Workplace Whispers. From now, it's over and out.